This happened 3 years ago, but I still get chills thinking about it. I've been having this recurring nightmare for about 2 weeks straight. Same dream every single night. I'm lost in some dark forest, and there's this woman in a white dress just standing between the trees, watching me. She never moves, never speaks, just stares with these hollow black eyes. Every time I try to get closer or run away, I wake up in a cold sweat. So when my buddy Jake suggested we go camping up in the Cascade Mountains for the weekend, I figured it'd be perfect. Get away from everything, clear my head, maybe finally get a decent night's sleep without that creepy dream. We drove up Friday afternoon to this spot Jake knew about. It wasn't like an official campground or anything, just this clearing near a creek about 2 miles off the main trail. Pretty isolated, which was exactly what I wanted. We set up our tents, got a fire going, and spent the evening just chilling and catching up. Jake had brought his guitar, so we sat around playing some songs until it got dark. I was feeling pretty good about everything. The dream hadn't even crossed my mind all day. But when we finally turned in around 11, that familiar anxiety started creeping back in. I kept telling myself it was just being in the woods that was making me think about it. I must have dozed off around midnight, and sure enough, there I was again. Same dream, same dark forest. But this time something felt different. The trees looked way too familiar. Like, exactly the same as the ones around our campsite. And when I looked down, I was wearing the same clothes I'd gone to sleep in. The woman in white was there too, standing maybe 30 feet away between 2 big pine trees. But instead of just staring like usual, she raised her arm and pointed deeper into the woods. Then for the first time ever, she spoke. Her voice was like a whisper, but somehow I could hear it crystal clear.
"Find me,"
she said. That's when I woke up. My heart was pounding and I was drenched in sweat. I checked my phone, it was 3:17 a.m. Jake was snoring away in his tent, completely peaceful. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was just the same stupid dream. But something felt way too real about it this time. I must have laid there for 20 minutes trying to fall back asleep when I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate steps on the dried leaves outside our tents. I held my breath and listened. Step, step, step. Then nothing. "Jake," I whispered as loud as I dared. Nothing. He was completely out. The footsteps started again, but this time they were circling our campsite. I grabbed my flashlight and slowly unzipped my tent just enough to peek out. The fire had died down to just glowing embers, so I couldn't see much of anything. But I could definitely hear something moving out there. I clicked on my flashlight and swept it around the edge of our campsite. Trees, rocks, our gear hanging from a branch. Nothing unusual. But as I moved the beam toward where the footsteps had been coming from, it caught something white between the trees. My blood went ice cold. There she was. The woman from my dreams, standing in the exact same spot I just dreamed about. Same white dress, same hollow stare. But this wasn't a dream. I was wide awake, holding a flashlight, and she was right there. I blinked hard, thinking my eyes were playing tricks on me. But when I opened them, she was still there. And now she was raising her arm, pointing deeper into the woods, just like in the dream. No way, I whispered to myself. This isn't happening. But it was happening. She started walking, moving between the trees in the direction she'd been pointing. Without even thinking about it, I found myself crawling out of my tent. It was like something was pulling me to follow her. I know how crazy this sounds, but I had to know what was going on. Was I sleepwalking? Having some kind of breakdown? I grabbed my bigger flashlight and started walking after her, trying to be as quiet as possible. She stayed just at the edge of my flashlight beam, always moving deeper into the woods. I followed for what felt like forever, probably 15 or 20 minutes. The whole time I kept thinking I should turn back, wake up Jake, get the hell out of there. But I couldn't stop myself. Finally, she stopped in this small clearing I'd never seen before. There were these weird rock formations, like someone had stacked stones in perfect circles. In the center was this old fire pit, but it looked ancient, like it had been there for decades. The woman turned around and looked directly at me for the first time. That's when I saw her face clearly. It wasn't hollow black eyes like in my dreams. It was worse. She had my face. My exact face, but pale and twisted into this expression of pure terror. "You found me," she said in my own voice. I stumbled backward, almost dropping my flashlight. When I looked up again, she was gone. But something else was there now. In the center of the stone circles was a tent. My tent. The exact same one I'd been sleeping in 20 minutes ago. I ran. I don't remember much about getting back to our campsite, just branches whipping my face and my lungs burning. When I got there, Jake was up and freaking out. "Dude, where were you?" he said. "I woke up and your tent was empty." I've been looking for you for like an hour. An hour? It felt like 20 minutes, maybe 30 tops. But when I checked my phone, it was almost 5 a.m. I was sleepwalking, I told him, which wasn't exactly a lie. Had a weird dream and must have wandered off. We packed up and left as soon as the sun came up. I never told Jake what really happened. How could I? But here's the thing that still messes with me. When we got back to the car, I checked my backpack to make sure I had everything. My journal was in there, the one I'd been writing in before bed. The last entry wasn't in my handwriting. In messy, shaky letters, someone had written, "The dreams are real. She's waiting for you to come back." I haven't had that nightmare since, but I also haven't been camping in 3 years. Sometimes I think about going back to find that clearing, to see if it was all real. But honestly, I'm way too scared of what I might find there. Or what might find me. This happened last summer in the Adirondacks, but I've been having these dreams about it for months before it even went down, which is the part that really freaks me out. So for like 3 weeks straight, I kept having this same nightmare. I'm hiking alone on this trail I'd never seen before, and there's this old wooden bridge over a creek. The bridge is all rotted out and missing planks, but in the dream I always cross it anyway. On the other side, there's this guy sitting on a stump just staring at me. He's wearing a red flannel shirt and has this scraggly beard, but here's the thing that made it so creepy. His face was always blurred out, like I could see everything else perfectly, but where his face should be, it was just this weird static blur. Every single time I try to get closer to see him better, I'd wake up, my heart would be pounding, and I'd be all sweaty. It was getting so bad I wasn't sleeping well, and my girlfriend kept asking what was wrong with me. Anyway, my buddy Marcus had been planning this camping trip for months, and I really didn't want to bail on him. We were going to hike about 6 miles into the backcountry and camp by this lake he'd found on some trail app. One figured getting out in nature would help clear my head and maybe the dreams would stop. We drove up Friday morning and started hiking around noon. The trail was pretty straightforward, nothing too crazy, just your typical Adirondack forest, dense trees, rocky terrain, the usual stuff. We hiked for maybe 4 hours and were getting close to where we wanted to set up camp when Marcus stopped and pointed ahead. There was a creek cutting across the trail, and spanning it was this old wooden bridge. It looked exactly like the one from my dreams, same rotted planks, same missing boards, everything. My stomach dropped and I just stood there staring at it. Marcus was like, "Yo, you good man," and I tried to play it off. I didn't want to sound crazy telling him about some stupid dream, but seeing that bridge in real life after dreaming about it for weeks was seriously messing with my head. We crossed over and found a good spot to camp, maybe a quarter mile past the bridge. Marcus started setting up his tent, but I kept looking back toward the bridge. I had this weird feeling like something was watching us. The whole area felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on why. We got camp set up and had dinner. As the sun was going down, Marcus was in a good mood, talking about how peaceful it was out here, but I was having trouble relaxing. That dream kept playing in my head and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen. Around 10 p.m. Marcus went to sleep, but I stayed up by the fire. I kept hearing these little sounds in the woods, probably just animals, but every noise made me jump. I must have sat there for 2 hours just listening and staring into the darkness. Finally, I decided to try and get some sleep. I crawled into my tent and was actually starting to drift off when I heard footsteps, really slow, deliberate steps on the leaves outside. They stopped right next to my tent and I held my breath waiting. Then I heard this voice, really quiet, like a whisper, "Hey there." My blood went cold because it sounded exactly like the voice from my dreams, the same tone, same cadence, everything. I didn't move, didn't even breathe. I just laid there hoping whoever it was would go away. But then the voice came again, closer to my tent this time. "I know you're awake, come on out." I grabbed my headlamp and slowly unzipped my tent just enough to peek outside. There was a guy standing maybe 10 feet away wearing a red flannel shirt, and he had a scraggly beard just like in my dream, but this time I could see his face clearly. He looked normal enough, middle-aged, weathered from being outdoors, but his eyes were what got me. They were completely black, not just dark brown, but pure black, like looking into empty holes. "Come with me," he said in that same whisper. "I want to show you something." Every instinct I had was screaming at me to wake up Marcus and get the hell out of there, but it was like I was frozen. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. I just stared at this guy who looked exactly like the person from my nightmares. He turned and started walking back toward the bridge. I don't know why, but I found myself following him. It was like my body was moving on its own. Marcus was still sound asleep in his tent and didn't hear any of this. We walked back to the bridge and the guy stopped right in the middle of it. The planks creaked under our weight and I was terrified we were going to fall through. He turned around and looked at me with those horrible black eyes. "This is where it happens," he said. "Where what happens?" I managed to ask. "This," he said and pointed down at the water. I looked over the edge of the bridge and saw something that made my heart stop. There was a body floating face down in the creek below. It was wearing the exact same clothes I had on. I stumbled backward and almost fell through a gap in the planks. When I looked up, the guy was gone. I was alone on the bridge with just the sound of water flowing underneath. I ran back to camp as fast as I could and shook Marcus awake. I was freaking out trying to explain what happened, but it sounded insane. Even to me, he thought I'd had a nightmare or was sleepwalking. We packed up and left first thing in the morning. I kept looking back at that bridge as we hiked out, expecting to see the guy in the red flannel watching us, but there was nothing. Here's the part that really messes with me though. When we got back to the parking area, there was a park ranger talking to some other hikers. I overheard him saying they'd found a body in the creek yesterday, a hiker who'd apparently fallen from the old bridge. I asked the ranger about it, and he said the guy had been missing for 3 days. They think he tried to cross the bridge at night and fell through where the planks were rotted out. The description he gave matched me perfectly. Same height, same build, even wearing similar clothes. The ranger said they'd identified him from his driver's license. His name was the same as mine, just spelled differently. I never told Marcus about that part. One, never told anyone actually, but I keep thinking about what that guy said on the bridge. This is where it happens. Like maybe in my dreams, I wasn't seeing some random nightmare. Maybe I was seeing my own death. I haven't been back to the Adirondacks since, and I probably never will, but sometimes I still have that dream. Only now when I cross the bridge and look down at the water, I see 2 bodies floating there. Mine and someone else's who looks exactly like me. This happened about 6 months ago, but I've been having dreams about this exact trail for almost a year before I ever actually went there, which is what makes this whole thing so messed up. I've been having the same nightmare probably 3 times a week for months. I'm hiking alone on this narrow dirt trail surrounded by really tall pine trees, and there's always this fog rolling through, making everything look gray and spooky. In the dream, I keep walking forward even though I don't want to, and eventually I come to this clearing where there's an old wooden sign that just says "Turn Back" in faded red letters. But here's the weird part. Every time I see that sign in the dream, I can't turn around. My legs just keep moving forward like I have no control, and that's always when I wake up heart pounding and covered in sweat. My brother Jake had been bugging me for months to go on this camping trip with him up in northern Michigan. He'd found this trail online that looked pretty remote and figured it'd be perfect for getting away from everything. I kept putting it off because honestly the dreams were freaking me out and I didn't really want to be hiking anywhere, but Jake wouldn't let it go, so finally I said yes. We drove up on a Friday morning and got to the trailhead around noon. The parking area was completely empty, which Jake was stoked about, but it kind of gave me the creeps. The trail started right at the edge of this dense pine forest, and the second I saw it, my stomach dropped. It looked exactly like the trail from my dreams. Same narrow dirt path, same tall trees, everything. I tried to tell myself it was just coincidence. There's probably thousands of trails that look similar, but as we started hiking, I kept getting this overwhelming sense of deja vu, like I'd walked this exact route before. Jake was in a great mood chatting about random stuff, but I was having trouble focusing. The whole forest felt familiar in this really unsettling way. Even the way the light filtered through the trees was exactly like in my nightmares. About an hour and we hit this section where fog started rolling, and Jake made some joke about it being spooky, but I was genuinely starting to panic. The fog got thicker and thicker until we could barely see 20 feet ahead of us. That's when Jake stopped and pointed through the mist. There was a clearing up ahead, and right in the middle of it was an old wooden sign. My heart started racing because I knew exactly what that sign was going to say before we even got close enough to read it. Sure enough, as we walked into the clearing, there it was, "Turn Back," painted in faded red letters on weathered wood. Jake laughed and said someone probably put it there as a joke, but I was freaking out. This was exactly like my dream down to the smallest detail. I told Jake we should actually turn back, that maybe this was a sign we shouldn't be here, but he just rolled his eyes and kept walking. That's when things got really weird in my dreams. I never had control over my legs. They just kept moving forward on their own, but standing there in real life looking at that sign, I had the exact same feeling, like my body wanted to turn around and run, but my legs were moving me forward anyway. I tried to stop walking, but I couldn't. It was like something else was controlling my movements. Jake didn't seem to notice anything was wrong. He just kept hiking and talking, but I was basically being forced to follow him deeper into the woods. The trail continued for maybe another mile before it ended at this small lake. Jake was excited to set up camp there, but I was terrified. The whole area felt wrong, like we weren't supposed to be there. I kept looking back toward the trail, expecting to see someone or something following us. We set up our tents and Jake started a fire as the sun was going down. I tried to act normal, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were in serious danger. Every little sound in the woods made me jump, and I kept seeing movement in my peripheral vision that wasn't there when I looked directly. Around 10 p.m. Jake went to sleep, but there was no way I was going to be able to. I sat by the dying fire just listening to the forest and trying to figure out what was happening to me. Was I losing my mind? How could I have been dreaming about a place I'd never been? That's when I heard footsteps coming from the direction of the trail, really slow, deliberate steps, like someone was trying to be quiet. I grabbed my flashlight and swept it toward the sound, but didn't see anything. The footsteps stopped. I waited maybe 5 minutes before they started again. This time they were closer, and I could tell whoever it was circling our campsite. I wanted to wake up Jake, but I was too scared to make any noise. Finally, I saw a figure moving between the trees at the edge of my flashlight beam. It was a person, but they were walking in this really strange way. Their movements were jerky and unnatural, like they weren't fully in control of their own body. The person stepped into the clearing and I got a good look at them. It was me, an exact copy of myself, wearing the same clothes and everything, but their eyes were completely blank, like nobody was home. The other me opened their mouth and spoke in my own voice, but the words didn't match their lip movements. Turned back, it said, while smiling this horrible empty smile. I blinked and they were gone. I sat there until sunrise, convinced I was having some kind of breakdown. When Jake woke up, I told him we needed to leave immediately. I made up some excuse about feeling sick. As we packed up and started hiking back, I kept looking over my shoulder, expecting to see myself following us. When we got to the clearing with the sign, I made Jake walk faster. I didn't want to spend another second in that place. But here's what really messes with me. We hiked for hours trying to get back to the parking area, and we never found it. The trail just kept going and going, like it was leading us in circles. We were both getting panicked when, finally around noon, we stumbled out of the woods at a completely different trailhead about 10 miles from where we'd parked. Jake's car was there, though, sitting in the parking lot like it had been moved. Neither of us remembered driving to this location, and Jake swears he locked the car, but when we got to it, the doors were wide open. We got the hell out of there, and I never told Jake about seeing myself in the woods that night. How could I? But I still have that dream sometimes, and now when I get to the clearing and see that sign, I know exactly what's waiting for me on the other side. Sometimes I wonder if I'm still there, if I never actually left that forest, and everything since then has just been another dream, but I guess there's no way to know for sure. All I know is I'm never going hiking again.